Well, we're excited to continue this wonderful day, and we really now want to really get into our next presentation, which is impacting educational outcomes and reading proficiency through fatherhood engagement. And we have the right person here to tell us about that. And this is Kenneth Braswell, Sr., who's the Executive Director of the Fathers Incorporated, Director of National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse. And Ken can tell you more about what he does and what he has been doing for many years. And I don't want to age him, but he's been doing this work for decades. And he's one of those that takes his learning and experiences and always moves this agenda forward and helping us think broadly about this issue around men and fathers. And it's really integrated into all the work that he does. Some of you are familiar with him speaking at different conferences across the country. And so what he gives helps move this agenda forward. And so you're going to be in for a great treat. So join me in welcoming Kenneth Braswell to the stage. He has one of the greatest names ever. All our mamas will think I'm like yes, exactly.
Good afternoon. It is such a pleasure to be here again this year. My good friend Deborah always contacts me and just says, Kenny, I need you this year to be in a space, and my answer to her is when and where. And so, because I love the work that she has done with the National Healthy Start Association and the work that each and every one of you do in your own communities. It's important for us to get together like this multiple times to talk about responsible fatherhood. I was in the back and there was, I don't know if you guys saw it, we were looking at the chart with the young lady from Harvard, and it started out with I think 2 guys, next thing I know it was 5 guys, and then it was 10 guys. And we just found ourselves in a circle. And typically when I come to places like this, I try not to talk to anybody because when I talk to people, they influence my presentation. And so I'm gonna tell you now that that circle impacted my presentation. So there's several things that I was going to say, I'm not going to say because of some of the things that I heard in that circle. But one of the things that, so I wear 2 hats. One of them is as the director of Fathers Incorporated, which is my not-for-profit that started in New York State in 2004. I've been in this work in community service for the last 26. You heard Ken say, I'm not going to tell anybody how old he is, but he's been around for decades. It's like, you say that, it's like, thank you, yeah. So, been doing this work, and while I was in New York State, I was the director of the New York State Fatherhood Initiative, where we funded programs across the state. And then shortly thereafter, became the prime contractor for the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that oversaw President Obama's Fatherhood Initiative within that agency. And so we have the privilege of being able to say that on the ground, moving his work throughout his administration came through my office and my hands, and so I'm very proud of not only the legacy that he gave us as a man, but the legacy that he gave us as a father and a husband. And every time that he presented that imagery for us, it was a motivation to do more and to do better. And so now that he's gone, I'm even more motivated to do that. But I will say this, and this was a blessing that just came upon us 2 days ago, Thursday. Our officers at HHS met with the new transition team under the new administration. And we knew that meeting was coming, and we were a little nervous about what was going to happen to our contract. And so the good thing about our contract is it's written in legislation, so we're not going anywhere, but that doesn't mean anything for the grantees that are around the country. They're somewhat vulnerable to the budget. And so we were asked to put together a report of what we've done with the Clearinghouse over the last 6 years that we've had it. And so we spent a few months putting that together to kind of talk about the work that we've been doing around the country with respect to fatherhood. And when we put the report together, we were just extremely overwhelmed by the work that we have done. Sometimes you don't know how much work you've done until somebody shows it to you on paper, right? And so one of the things that they saw in our work through our media campaign, so those of you who have seen commercials like the cheerleader commercial, the WWE commercial, to the Today Show commercial, and many other fatherhood commercials that you see running across this nation, those commercials come out of our shop. But in connection with our relationship with the Ad Council, who's one of my subcontractors, over the last 6 years, we were able to get over $150 million in donated media. And so when it comes to looking at programs that are low funded, meaning $3 million a year, that's a drop. When I say it to some people, they're like, you got what? Can you purchase this? I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, that money, that's like me giving you $3 and telling you to live the rest of the year on it. Right? And so that money goes really, really fast. But to take that money and leverage that money over 6 years into $150 million, I think anybody would take that bet any day. And that's what happened last Thursday. And so that was kind of the hallmark of what they saw. But what they saw is that through that particular campaign, that we also did a great job in impacting the imagery of responsible fatherhood in the media. And those of you who pay attention to commercials and pay attention to media will see that the narrative of responsible fatherhood is not where it should be out there, but it is more today than it was 7, 8 years ago, where you can watch the Super Bowl and see 3 or 4 commercials that are fatherhood themes. That now it doesn't even have to be the Super Bowl. Now a commercial will pop up and it will have a fatherhood theme. And so corporations are now becoming more comfortable, again, speaking to fathers. Again, not nearly enough, but more than they have been doing. And so we take an honor in being able to influence how the country and at least the business world have begun to see fathers. And so the work that I'm going to talk to you about today starts in that place. And so Deborah asked me to talk to you about a project that we're doing now in Atlanta that I'm going to connect all of this for you. Am I having problems with this too? All right. So that's just some information about how you can reach us. In addition to the media campaign that we do, we also have a robust website at fatherhood.gov. There is a library on that website that has over 2,500 pieces of research and other resources there for those of you who are looking for resources in your work. On our website, we also have all of our media. All of our media is downloadable. All of our videos that you see are downloadable. All of our PSAs are downloadable. All of our posters and things are downloadable, and they are free. In addition to that, we also have a relationship with Parent Help. And Parent Help is our version of our Responsible Fatherhood hotline that fathers around the country can call and get services and information about anything. And they can call at any time of the day. Now, if they call at 3 o'clock in the morning, they might not hear from anybody until 9 o'clock the next morning, but they will get an answer at 9 o'clock the next morning. So for those of you who are in spaces in your community where you're not surrounded by fatherhood agencies, this hotline is a good thing to give to folks, particularly fathers, to find resources. And so I just talked about that. My other hat is as a director of Fathers Incorporated. And Fathers Incorporated, like I said, started in New York State in 2004. And it started with an eye towards really beginning to deal with child support, custody, and visitation. And why do you think I begun looking at that work? Just one person, I know one person has to answer. Why do you think I got into that work? Okay. So you're running around the pool, but I need somebody to jump in the pool. Thank you. Because I was going through my own drama. Right? And so that was a great answer, but you were running around the pool. I needed to jump right dead in the smack dead in the middle of the pool. I started looking at this work because I was having issues with the mother of my youngest daughter. And I found myself in court, right? In family court, in a space that I had never been in my life before. And I was watching what was taking place in that court, where there were mothers and fathers who were sitting on opposite sides of the room, and children running back and forth, not knowing where to place their loyalty, because they could not understand why mommy was sitting over here and daddy was sitting over here. And so when I walked out of there, a couple of things happened. And so I decided that day that something felt wrong about that. I was already in community service. I was already primarily working with men because I was a vice president of the Urban League at the time in upstate New York, and decided that I needed to get out of this workforce development space and really begin to start looking at fathers in a different way. But something more phenomenal happened the next time that we came back, her mother and I, where we were now sitting in court, where her mothers were sitting on this side and I was sitting on this side, in front of a female judge, looking at a female law guardian and her female judge, and just me sitting at the table by myself. But when we walked out of there, we never had any conversation in the courtroom itself. When we got outside, that's when we had our conversations. I don't even know what that was about, but that was how we communicated. And she turned to me and said, "This is wrong, that government shouldn't be in the middle of telling us how to raise our child." And it was the most significant thing that I've heard in my life. And as a result of that, I now have a 17-year-old girl who is graduating from high school this May. Woo-hoo! She is gifted, and she is going to Kennesaw State University to enter into sports medicine. And I tell you that story because throughout her academic life, and throughout her mother and I going to school conferences and going to family reunions and events, that if you spoke to anybody who did not know that Shani and I was not together, you would not know that through my daughter. Like when my daughter was at school and she talked about home, she never said, "I'm going to my daddy's house," or "I'm going to mommy's house." When she said home, she didn't distinguish which way she was going. Home for her was as much at my house as it was at her mother's house, and primarily because my daughter wasn't a bad child. How many of you know what that means? And so my daughter never had to carry a bag from house to house. When she came into my house was set up just as much as it was her home as it was in her house. So she never had to carry a bag of clothes, a bag of her favorite things and all those things from her mother's house to my house. And because of that, home was more comprehensive in her head than what it typically is for parents. When kids come to the daddy's house, they gotta bring a bag with them, because daddy doesn't have any clothes for the kid, and daddy doesn't have the kid's favorite toy, and daddy doesn't have all of those things. And so it was one of the things that really kind of shaped why I wanted to do this work. Fast forward. A couple of months ago, we decided that we wanted to do some more on-the-ground work, particularly in Atlanta. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I lived in New York all my life. And a couple of years ago, there was about 3 snowstorms in a row. And each one brought about 9 or 10 inches with it. And I remember coming home the 3rd day, and I walked in the house, and my wife said, "Are you gonna shovel the driveway?" I'm like, "I ain't shoveling nothing. We just gonna wait for this to melt." And I'm tired. I said, "You know what? It's time to get out of here. It's time to go. I'm too old to be shoveling snow in this driveway as much as we did." And that was October. By July, I had circled the wagon train. I had gone to Africa, and by the time I'd come back from Africa, my wife had put the kids in the car. My youngest daughter and her mother, my baby mama, drove down to Atlanta, found the school district, and in July, my daughter and her mother moved to Atlanta. And in August, my wife and my son moved to Atlanta. So I didn't have to worry about my family. I didn't have to worry about commuting back and forth to see my daughter. When I said I was moving for the betterment of our family, we all moved. Is that resonating with anybody? Right? And so when we talk about, I don't just talk about this stuff. I live this stuff. This what we're talking about, this is who I am. I live it every day, my family lives it every day. If you follow my Facebook page, you'll see all of my children engage in stuff. But this one thing about reading struck me last year, because one of the things that resonated with me when we got to Atlanta is my son. And so my son is 8 years old, and a year or so ago, they asked me to come speak at the White House on men's health. And right before I went to go speak about men's health, it was like right after Christmas. And so I'm in the house, and I'm sitting at my computer, as many of us do, working in our home. And my son comes in, and he has one of his wife beater shirts on, right? You know the shirt, that shirt with the straps. But he also had a pillow up underneath his shirt. And so I'm looking at him, and he says, "Daddy." And I'm like, "What?" He says, "This is you." And I said, this is Christmas Eve too, right? His gifts weren't wrapped yet. So I had a challenge in whether or not he was gonna have a great Christmas or not. But when he walked away from me, I said to myself, after I got over my own hurt feelings, because I went to my wife, I said, "You know what my son said?" He's talking about, and so my wife had to do what? She had to rub my belly and said, "Honey, this all right. I love all of it." You just So I got balance in my house. So when my son tears my steam down, my wife builds it back up for me. Because my son has no filter, right? He's young. And he's 8 years old now, but he was 6 years old then, but he has no filter. But he is also smart and vibrant, and he is aware of everything around him. He asked the right questions. He knew during the election the difference between red states and blue states. He knew the difference between Republicans and Democrats. He knew the difference between Trump and Obama. He knew things that I didn't think a 7-year-old boy should know. But he knows all of that stuff because since he was a baby, we've always read to him. We've always had books in our house. In the back of my car, you think you are in a rotting library. Because in the back of my car, he knows that before he pulls out his PlayStation to play with it or his PS2, he has to read a book first. And so now he doesn't even bring his PS2 in the car because the first thing he does is he has in the back of my car all of his favorite books. And so he reads everything to which I have to be comfortable about what I have in the back seat of my car that he might pick up and read. And so a year or 2 years ago when Obama was talking about the gun laws in this country, there was a USA Today that I brought from one of my trips in the back of the car. And it talked about how Obama was addressing gun laws in the country. And so I'm driving, my son is in the back seat of the car, and he says, "Daddy, how do you feel about this gun law stuff that Obama's doing?" And so I was like, "What?" And I turn around, and what does my son have in his hand? He's got the USA Today in his hand, and he's reading this stuff. I'm like, "Boy, put that thing down. You know, grab Dr. Seuss Cat in the Hat and Green Eggs and Ham, so that I can explain to you." But I say that to say that because of his love for reading, right, and because of his desire to read, he now is a child that does not have a problem with expressing himself. And on one hand, I want to kind of suppress that expression because sometimes to me it can sound a little like, as the old folks would say, you need to be seen and not heard, right? It can sound a little arrogant or sound a little outside the box. You can't speak to grown folks that way. But on the other hand, the same thing that we're trying to do as men with our sons, which is to advance and raise our children's self-esteem to have a voice, I can't on one hand say I want to cultivate that, and on the other hand say I want to stifle that. Because as black boys and black men in this community, we have a problem with our voice. And so you've heard a couple of people come up here today and talk about how we get in rooms where the rooms don't look like this, and we have a problem with talking out loud because we don't want anybody to judge us based on the voice that we use or the tone that we use, because that's going to say something specific about us. Primarily, somehow, the raising of the tone of our voice makes us dangerous, right? And so we can't speak up. And so we keep hearing this narrative about having our voices being loud and folks saying that they're dangerous. So because of that, when we get in rooms around certain people, we don't even say anything. And then we come home and you wonder, wives and significant others, why we're not speaking, because all day I've conditioned myself not to talk and to monitor my conversation. I don't know how to turn that on and off. I only know one thing, to keep it off. And so with our children, we have to be mindful of that, particularly with our boys. And so I said something earlier to somebody that, when we're working in this field of responsible fatherhood, we tend to talk about fathers and boys because that's the comfortable lean. But in this work, we have to begin to start understanding that we got to start talking about fathers and girls with the same balance. Right? Because our girls need fathers in their lives just as much as boys do. So when we're talking about fathers who are fatherless and struggling because they didn't have their fathers in their lives, many of them are linked up with mothers who also didn't have fathers in their lives. And their view of manhood and healthy manhood is distorted and dysfunctional based on not having a father in their life and the trauma that they have as a result of the relationships they've been in. So they bring all of that stuff to the table. So guys, you wonder why you're having so much problem with the mother of your children. Start looking into her background and start trying to understand how she's formed her narrative about men. It should be on your checklist when you meet at the club, right? Because a lot of questions we should ask at the club, we don't wait until we get into the fraternity room to ask them. Too late. The drama is always already in your baggage, right? And so, Real Dads Read is our attempt at really looking at our communities and trying to engage in a two-generational approach by going to what is the most trusted institution in our communities for men, the barbershop. If we as men don't do anything else with our money and anything else with our time, at some point, not unless we have a particular hairstyle, in 2 weeks is kind of guys, it's like 2 weeks is kind of like there, like I'm on the edge of mine right now, I got like 2 more days to go, right? And so 2 weeks, I'm going to see my barber. And that's going to be my ritual. And so because we know that fathers are comfortable in those spaces, how can we utilize these spaces to do some of the work that we're doing? And how do we also use those spaces so that we can also impact the young boys that are also in those spaces? Because what we see when we go into the barbershops is that while we're in there, all the guys are talking. There's a lot of chatter going on. But when you walk into the barbershop, all of the young men are sitting there and they're not saying anything. They're not being talked to, they're not being engaged, nothing is happening with them. I get it, y'all. And so Real Dads Read is very simple. Real Dads Read is, again, a two-generational approach to really begin to start looking at young boys in the grades K through 8. It is designed for all fathers, but we also know that the challenges in our community are with Black and brown fathers. Although the project is in barbershops and we're probably going to primarily touch boys, one of the realities today in our barbershops increasingly that when you go into barbershops, you're almost always going to see a single mom. And why do you think you see single moms in the barbershop? Because they're bringing boys, right? And oftentimes when they're bringing boys, if they have girls, who they bringing as well? Look at you. Go ahead. Give that man a raise. And so we know the research around father engagement with respect to boys. Our problem statement in Real Dads Read is to really find a way to address third grade proficiency with respect to our children, because we know that third grade proficiency levels are a key indicator for school success, high school completion, and future economic success. However, at the same time, we also know that statistics say that 80% of low-income children will not reach that indicator. So many of our children in low-income communities are going to struggle in life because they have not met the proficiency milestone in third grade. However, yesterday I had a meeting with Dr. Ivy Tolson. If you guys don't know Dr. Ivy Tolson, you should know him. And so he is probably one of the premier voices in this country, specifically around education and black men and boys. He is the previous director of HBCUs for the White House, and he's here in DC. And he explained something to me yesterday that I never gave any thought to. He says, Kenny, you know, we spend too much time on the definition of proficiency with respect to our children in our communities, because while it is an indicator of challenge and struggle, it's not a death note. And what he said was that when we begin to start looking at this whole notion of proficiency in our schools, that we also have to understand that at the same time that they're struggling in school, we also have to address why they're struggling in school. So their proficiency and the challenge that they have in meeting proficiency has to also do with they didn't eat this morning. They didn't have any heat in their house. Their teacher doesn't really understand them. Their class size is too big. Their class size is too big. They don't have enough resources. And none of that stuff plays into factoring proficiency for our children. And so in this work, we have to figure out how we play in on all of those different things with respect to our children. Because these are the images that we want to see in our barbershops. Right now in Atlanta, we have 45 barbershops. We got some funding from the Annie Casey Foundation to put libraries in these barbershops, all with an eye towards having something in the barbershops that would resonate with children when they walk into the barbershop. The other key element with respect to this is that all of our libraries in the barbershops, 90% of the books in those cases are culturally competent, meaning that our children are seeing stories that reflect them. Because desire to read is not an issue for our children, access to read is an issue for our children. So many of these communities, it's not because they don't like to read, it's because the things that they're being forced to read does not connect with them. Does that make sense? And so these are the images that we're starting to see in these barbershops, where boys are now coming into the barbershops enthused and excited about seeing what new books are going to be in the library. But the thing that strikes me about this particular picture here is look at the young man sitting next to him. What's going on in his head? What's going on in his head? He's interested in the boy that's sitting next to him reading something, which means that I also now got to figure out in the barbershops, how do I engage him as well? Because now I have his attention. And it took a little boy reading to get that. So creating these comfortable spaces in these barbershops where we can create the space where they feel comfortable in being them. This is the 30 barbershops, there's 15 others, and it continues to grow. I think we're close to 50 now. And if you email me, I'll send you this PowerPoint because there's some things in here that I think you should have. I'm getting close, if I'm not already at the end of my time. We are in Atlanta focused on what they call below the belt. It is the most stressed communities in Atlanta. So the counties are Southern DeKalb, Southern Fulton, and then we have two other counties, Clayton and Henry County, that we're focused on in the city of Atlanta. These are the bookcases. This is what the bookcases look like. Going into the shops, each bookcase holds about 20 books. We have our imagery on the front of it. The colors are always attractive for them. This is one of our barbershops in McDonough, Georgia, which is about 30 minutes from Atlanta. And then we also have another partner in Columbus, Georgia, which is about 2 hours. And they have 10 barbershops. And so we're beginning to get people calling from around the country to bring Real Dads Read not only into their barbershops, but also into beauty salons. The partner in Columbus has 3 beauty salons as well. In addition to that, by the end of the year, we're also looking to walk into schools and create Real Dads Read clubs. And so many of you have daycare centers, Head Starts, you're working in schools. One of the ways to engage dad is to give them something that they want to be engaged in. And so we're putting together all of the paperwork and work to begin to start creating what we're going to call Real Dads Read clubs in schools, where fathers are coming into the school and meeting to read with their children in one location. Why is that important? It's important because we then begin to start bringing fathers into the school on purpose. In addition to that, we have an agency that we're working with on the ground because we just can't just do books. I said that it's a 2-generational approach. Because of our relationships with the barbershops, many of the men who are now comfortable with us being there are now asking the barbers questions about, hey, I got a child support issue. I got a housing issue. I just got thrown out. I just got whatever. And the barbershop now gets to say, I have a relationship with an entity that can help you. And so we get the phone call from them, and then we go out and on the furthering fathering side, we're now not only working and engaging children in the barbershop, but now we're also providing services for the men that are in the barbershop, and it makes it much easier because now they're getting these services in a place that they're already comfortable in, right? Dialogue is something that we do. We go out on every other Saturday, about 10 of us, and we just bombard barbershops. We just walk in, and we all have our Real Dads Read shirts on, and when we walk into the barbershops, it is organic. As soon as we walk in, a conversation ensues, and we're in the barbershop talking for the next 2 hours about all kinds of stuff that I can't mention today. But the conversation is natural. But again, it is the changing of the culture of the barbershop so that you, as programs who are trying to reach these fathers, because the researchers are talking about they're having problems reaching these fathers, we don't have a problem whatsoever reaching them. However, you can't call them. I have to call them. And I may even have to come with them, right? Until they can trust you, because one of the biggest issues that we have in our fatherhood programs is lack of trust, right? Got some amens out there on that one. And I'm sorry, let me get back to that one, because I need to talk about this one. One of the other things that we want to do, and the reason that we take so many pictures, the reason that we post so many images on social media, is because at the same time that we're doing this work, we also have to impact narrative change. Because people don't believe black men read, right? And they definitely don't believe that black men read with their children. And so to the extent that we can have men across the country reading with their children, posting these pictures on the web, when you go in to type in black fatherhood, what I want to have happen is the typical pictures that come up when you type black fatherhood. Now I want to bombard that space with pictures that show true black fatherhood. Does that make sense? Skip by that. This is a poster that we have that's downloadable on our site. If you want to know more about Real Dads Read, just go to realdadsread.gov. It's a nice poster we put together that just really illustrates and talks about 11 reasons dad should read to their children. This is my contact information, and I'll end there with this last kind of shameless plug, right? And so one of the things that we've also recognized in doing these book projects with fathers is that fathers are more apt to read a book that talks about them, and that they're part of the narrative. There's not a lot of books out there where fathers are at the core of the theme of the book. So what we decided to do is, I'm not going to wait for these books. So I've written 3 books, and I have 7 more in my head. And thank you for the class, but I want you to understand that all of these books are designed to stimulate conversation. And so the first book is about teaching parents and how to talk to their children about protest and what protest looks like, and understanding what protest looks like. The second book, Daddy's Feeling Blue, is getting parents to talk to their children about eating healthy and nutrition and those kinds of things. All of these books have parent and teacher guides in the back that stimulate and help them guide conversation. The third one, which comes out in June, it's not ready yet, is Daddy's Family Tree. And so it's also important for fathers to talk to their children about their legacy, about their family, to help them understand where they come from and how they should be empowered. Generational curses. Making sure that our children are aware that there are curses in our family that we need for them to break. And so that's what these 3 books are. Unfortunately, they're not for sale today because I got another hat on and I don't want to mess up that hat for the hat that sells books. And so if you want these, you have to go to our website. Thank you.
So we are past time. Maybe you can just take a moment to make that comment about barbershops, business versus resources. I think the audience would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's why we can and can't. And so we were talking, and I was explaining to him that one of the issues in the barbershops is understanding the history of barbershops and what barbershops have always been traditionally in our community. Our barbershops have always been resources. And I think today our barbershops are mostly businesses. And so when you go in and try to bring resources, it's hard to get someone to understand the importance of being a resource when their mindset is being a business. So when my older folks went to the barbershop, they went to the barbershop to find out what was going on in the community, who they could call to fix their front porch, who they can call to fix their carburetor. Remember you used to go have to get your carburetor fixed? Am I dating myself? Is that the decades thing? That's the decades thing coming out there? But there were things that we went to the barbershop for where we spent way back in the day. People used to go to the barbershop to get their teeth pulled. Right? We hope that people ain't doing that today, but that's part of the barbershop history. But part of this work is in Real Dads Read is to begin to establish these barbershops again as healthy resources in the community where men feel comfortable in coming in and getting whatever their needs met and not just walking into a business and spending money.
Let's give another hand.